The story started when I left Los Angeles at midnight in my car, and I was driving 4 hours to Las Vegas. Down, it was 3 o'clock in the morning. Nobody was on the road. It's a 2-lane road from LA to Vegas. No lights. Literally, it is the middle of the desert. There's not even a gas stop. There's no rest stop. It's just you and the desert. And so I went from this, level 10 euphoria, totally euphoric. And then the next moment, all of a sudden, I'm dying. And I couldn't breathe. It was like my lungs just completely shut down. So I've never had felt anything like this before. So I went into a complete state of fear.
Welcome, Namaste. Welcome to the Soul to Soul Conversations podcast. I'm Caroline Crawford.
And I'm Paul Crawford.
And we have a beautiful guest that Paul will discuss with you a little bit more in a moment with us today. But before that, we just have a little housekeeping or some announcements to make. So if you've been with us a while, you will know that I have my own channel, Caroline Crawford, Spirit of Love, where I do a lot of the energetic updates, guided meditations, all that kind of genre. And Paul has his Paul Crawford Timeless Teachings. And we've made the decision after a meeting with a dear friend that we are going to bring all those channels together in one place. So it's much more easier for you to find us, much more cohesive. So we're going to ask you from the bottom of our hearts to please check that if you haven't already, that you have subscribed to this channel. And also, would you be kind enough, please, to hit the notification bell so whenever we upload a new video, you are aware of that. So with that said, please remember to subscribe, and I'm going to hand you over to Paul, who's going to introduce our intriguing guest.
So we welcome the lovely Yoga Premananda. Welcome, Yoga. So pleased that you could join us on this podcast.
Thank you so much. So glad to be here.
Oh, great. And to share your experiences with us. And that's going to be the experiences of her near-death experience, which is often referred to as an NDE. And what really took place at that time, just a very brief outline, because we're going to listen to Yoga as she explains more about it. It was almost a nearly fatal car accident following a drug overdose of crystal meth. And Yoga spent years really understanding and healing from that incident. And it took 3 years until you finally came to understand that you actually had experienced that near-death experience of that NDE. And with that recognition, you then began a personal 20-year journey to fully heal and embody all that had taken place, and to absorb that, to not only teach you, but to gift you, both spiritually, physically, mentally, and emotionally. And Yoga now uses that personal experience, everything that she came from that every day from this NDE, to teach the wisdoms that came out from that, plus her experiences in helping clients of all ages to rise through the rebirth process of that an NDE actually offers. Yeah. So welcome
Yoga. So good to have you here.
Thank you so much, Caroline. Thank you so much, Paul. I'm so excited to be here today and to share the story and to talk to your audience and get to share something like this that's so special.
Yeah, well, we're just so thrilled you accepted our invitation. The funny thing is, before we start with the thing, Paul, Yoga and I actually met through another friend's car accident. I was offering to give him some complimentary healing. This was in 2021 because I reached out to Ben and asked him. And while I was there giving him some healing, I was fortunate enough to meet Yoga's brother, John, who's an amazing musician. And we got chatting about all the deep things straight away. And he said, my sister's going to be moving here from California. Can I give her your details? So that's a very long story short. So we actually met through another incident of a car accident. So that was interesting. But so Yoga, how do you feel that your life has changed and the way you view life and your experiences prior to having the NDE to
Yeah.
now afterwards. Could you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, that's actually a great question. So that's actually one of the most shocking parts of the story is the before and the after. So before the NDE, had very set personality. I was very quiet. I wasn't very communicative. I was definitely not focused on health. I was partying. Really, the reason why I was even doing the crystal meth, which I found out, later after doing a lot of introspection that happens after a near-death experience, was because that was a way to cover up a lot of deep sadness, which was coming from a mother wound. And so that was a big karmic experience that I had this lifetime, was having that deep mother wound. So it's interesting how a lot of sadness gets covered up, by different things that we do to kind of escape the sadness.
And I think a lot of younger people do that in our younger years, use different alcohol, cannabis, all sorts of things, don't we, to suppress that because we just want to be having fun. We don't want to remember those darker things. So
yeah, when we don't have a framework to
deal
deal with those
with it,
things, a healthy framework. So it was really one of the most beautiful processes to go through, to kind of uncover and, see what it really felt like to finally go through that sadness and see what it was teaching me and, how it was healing me.
And then how did you view life and the experiences, your perceptions of life after you had that experience?
Yeah, so one of the biggest takeaways and learning experiences that unfolded for me from the near-death experience was realizing how we have this integration of the human journey, which has, traumas and joys and just all those layers of the human journey, and then there's the soul's journey. And so a near-death experience is this beautiful acceleration where the soul's journey and the human journey starts to integrate together. And as that integration process starts to happen, because on the top we have the stories, so the human aspect of our life always has a story attached to it. But then when you start to integrate the soul's journey, there's no story there. The whole purpose of having the soul's journey is because that's our true purpose in life and our true purpose on earth. So that's another thing, as going through the rebirth process with myself and with clients, the soul wants us to live in our highest expression of our soul. And so that's one of the most beautiful things that comes out of a near-death experience, is that it's a beautiful opportunity. It's not mandatory, but it's always beautiful when someone chooses to go down that road to look at their soul's journey and see, oh, what is this near-death experience teaching me? What is it actually opening the door? What is this real opportunity that it's giving me?
Because I can still see those aspects in you. I could imagine that. And maybe that's why we connected so deeply, that I feel you can still be a little bit shy. And I think that's a lovely attribute to have, though. And I think it draws people to you, doesn't it? But then you've got this really beautiful, empowering confidence now that just radiates out. People are drawn to you. But I think, as we integrate all those aspects of ourselves, which you do so beautifully, it just makes us a more whole person, doesn't it?
Yeah, I think so. You just radiate this energy of openness.
Oh, beautiful.
And I think, and obviously and I think probably a lot of it has come through from that experience, I would imagine, because to go through that into the beautiful being that you are now is part of that process and that journey. So would you like to maybe just give us a bit more detail of what that experience was and what took place?
Yeah, absolutely. And so one other thing I really want to mention is the self-worth piece. Because deep in the process of reflecting on the near-death experience, reflecting on the car crash, the main thing underlying it was self-worth. So it's like, I think it's the most important thing along our journey of life, to really learn that our worthiness and how we really are worthy, because so much through trauma, it leaves this, it's very convincing sometimes that we're not of value, but really it's quite the opposite. So, okay, my story started when I left Los Angeles at midnight in my car, and I was driving 4 hours to Las Vegas, and I took crystal meth right before I left, and 3 hours into the journey is when I went from this complete state of euphoria. It was so euphoric, being really high on this crystal meth. The windows were down. It was 3 o'clock in the morning. Nobody was on the road. It's a 2-lane road from LA to Vegas, no lights. Literally, it is the middle of the desert. There's not even a gas stop. There's no rest stop. It's just you and the desert. And so I went from this, level 10 euphoria, totally euphoric. And then the next moment, all of a sudden, I'm dying. And I couldn't breathe. It was like my lungs just completely shut down. So I've never had felt anything like this before. So I went into a complete state of fear. And I felt that complete state of fear. I knew I was dying. That's when I had this car crash. So it was like my car went off the road, it crashed. I remember really specifically that my legs were crushed underneath the steering wheel. And so as I'm dying, at that moment I knew that I was dying, and I didn't fight it at all. There was this part of me that was very glad to be dying. And so as I'm dying and rising out of my body, all of a sudden I click over to this other version of myself. And all of a sudden I split into two versions. Now I have this version of myself where my body's upside down in the car, and I'm trying to get breath into my body. But I still also am remembering being crushed in the car. So that was the most confusing aspect of the near-death experience. Now I go through this part of the near-death experience when I raise up out of my body. All of a sudden I'm in this hell realm with fire. There's a spinning pyre of flames. There's souls hanging off of it, and they're crying for help. And as I'm looking at these souls' faces that are crying for help, that's when I met Archangel Raphael. So Archangel Raphael comes in, takes me out of this area, brings me into a waiting room, this heavenly waiting room where I'm sitting on a bench in this waiting room, and Archangel Raphael is sitting at a desk, and he's doing lots of paperwork. And the thing I remember the most is recognizing these souls that are coming and going out of the waiting room.
Yeah.
And I knew, so it was a very long hallway, and I couldn't see at the end of the hallway, but in my mind, I knew what was at the end of the hallway, and that was the entrance to heaven. And I knew I wasn't supposed to go down there, so I didn't even try to wander around this area. So I'm watching Archangel Raphael, I'm, seeing the souls coming and going, and then next thing I know, it felt like an imprinting. It was like my soul, my energy centers, everything within my body is getting imprinted with this information. And now I know that I'm going back to Earth. So now I come back into my body. I'm now still, my body's upside down in the car. I turn myself right side up, and I get to the steering wheel, and I just drive back to LA. And, a completely different person.
You must have been in a state of complete shock and disbelief at that point, and relief that, was it relief you were alive? I mean,
Not yet.
that is such a compelling story. And how old were you at the time?
I was 29.
Wow.
Yeah.
Gosh.
29 years old.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And how did you feel driving back to LA? You must have been so shaky.
Yeah. So for 3 years, from that point, for 3 years, I was just in a total panic. I couldn't function.
No.
I still had these two timelines running. I didn't know why. So that was the biggest thing, was trying to figure out, why do I have these two very distinct memories?
Yeah. Because I think there can be two versions of yourself, can't you? And during that, and then that must continue afterwards, does it? That these two things can be true at the same time.
Yeah.
How do you understand that, or explain that to people, and understand that for yourself?
Yeah. So it's so beautiful, because I know you're a medium and a channel.
Yeah.
And so one of my greatest healing moments from my near-death experience was when I went to see the channel Bashar.
We absolutely adore Bashar. I listen to him pretty regularly. He's such a wise information he gives.
Yeah, I can really say that he's one of the people that saved my life, because I got called on. The audience is huge, and I'm sitting in the audience, and so I was meant to be called on, and I got called on, and I stood up and I asked him why I had these two versions of myself. And he did explain. He said, because you did have that car crash, but then, the angels and God are able to reverse time. So he said, you were saved by God, and your time got reversed, and you were put on another timeline where you got to continue, but you still have your memory of the ending of that timeline. The minute he spoke those words, this relief,
can
because now I
imagine.
knew what was true. You know, when you can hear the truth.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I knew it was true, and that part of me that was suffering inside, not knowing why I had these two timelines, completely healed in that moment. And then it was this integration process. After hearing the truth, so much started to unravel, and then I was able to start really hearing my guides very clearly. It was
Yeah.
almost like having that blocked me
Yeah,
from
like
being,
muffled, and then it was suddenly
and
became
it was
clearer.
gone. So I'm so
Wow.
grateful to Bashar and people like yourself that can
Yes.
channel pure wisdom and really
Yeah.
help people heal.
And I think that's
in
the
that
key
way.
that you said as well, that you feel something deep inside you, you know that's true. And there's this huge relief, isn't there?
Yeah.
And release at the same time. So wow.
The truth is the most healing
Yeah.
thing that we
Yeah.
have.
Yeah.
Yeah.
To say the truth sets us
But
free.
it's funny just hearing you talk about that experience in terms of, you know, in 1 minute you've had this crash and this near death experience, and the next thing you're getting back behind the wheel when you're driving back.
Yeah.
And it's like it's almost like you have got two. There's two life experiences going on there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Because the
yeah.
car was completely crashed, and they uncrashed the car,
Oh wow.
uncrashed my legs being crushed under the steering. You know,
Wow.
so I mean that's a major,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah,
thing
that's
to have
incredible.
happen.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it must make you question, you know, the whole scenario, because you know, you remembered being in pain, your legs being crushed, you're upside down, and then the car's all right, you're all right, and
Yeah.
can you imagine the state of mind? So I know also that there's an understanding that, you know, do you feel the soul chooses these near death experiences for purposes of growth and expansion? As
Yeah.
hard as that may seem to some people, I feel this is a strong, you know, we don't always like to accept that, do we? But the soul does choose. Do you feel that that's something that resonates with you?
Yeah, it was probably about 10 years after my near death experience. So that one of the most beautiful things was that in my work, since it was 21 or 22 years ago now that I had the near death experience. So now I've been able to look back and I could see that, you know, so in 5-year increments, there's big awakenings happen like every 5 years, because when these near death experiences happen, you can't receive the whole awakening all at once. There's way too much to process. So on my 10-year mark, oh my goodness, exactly what you're saying, this total confirmation that my soul at the highest level chose to have that experience.
Yeah.
And then I was able to see that with all that imprinting that I was receiving in the waiting room of heaven, that that's like a time release capsule. So whenever somebody has an experience like this, whether it's a full-blown near-death experience or a very intense awakening, it's like we're imprinted with this time release information. And then at certain points along our journey, so I started feeling all of this extra information getting released out of my body. You know, it was like, I could almost feel like I have this time release capsule inside of me that just something will happen and it'll open up and all this information will come out.
Yeah.
But I think the main key is to be aware of it.
Yeah.
That awareness is the most important factor. So once somebody knows that they're going through this process, it alleviates the whole process.
Yeah. So before we move on to the how you held yourself and how you feel that took place, there's just one more thing. And do you feel that certain things are a catalyst for this, that people have this intense fear of death, which is what triggers the NDE?
Yeah, you know, so I had what I call a typical near-death experience. So I had a classic near-death experience where you cross over, you come back into your body, and then your life continues.
Yeah.
Well, in the last 21 years of my life, because I went on to study all these healing modalities, became a full-time energy healer, and I really dedicated my life to helping other people with near-death experience. And so, yeah, I feel like after going through all of that, what was the question again?
It was, do people have an intense fear of death,
Oh,
which
yeah.
triggers the NDE?
Okay. Yeah, so that's a non-typical near-death experience. So
Right.
some people can have a full-blown near-death experience just from having intense fear of death.
Wow.
So, say somebody is like with these fires in Los Angeles that are happening right now.
Yes, yeah.
Because at the time of this filming, that was just going on last
Yes,
week.
it is.
Everybody in LA is having a non-typical near-death experience because of that intense fear of death
Yeah, it
that
must be.
arises.
Yeah.
I must admit, when as part of just reading up a little bit more about it, one of the things that they were saying was about how after the experience, you'd lost that fear of death
Yeah.
because you'd
Yeah.
experienced it in such a almost magical energy of
Yeah.
part of that.
Yeah, realizing that there's really actually no death,
Yeah.
which
Yeah.
is so nice.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It sounds like that your soul chose that as part of your mission to come and really assist others in that healing process, and we all go through different experiences in life to get us onto that path. So yours was quite an intense experience, but it obviously what you're here to do, Yoga, because I know that you are completely committed to your healing work. So how did you heal yourself eventually? Do you feel that you've fully healed from that, or it's still this from this traumatic experience, or do you feel there's still elements that you are still not processing but evolving into? How do you feel that you've healed from that?
Yeah, I do feel like it's always evolving, the healing. So I think until the day we die, there's always this evolution that's happening, especially with something that big that occurs. I feel like I'll probably carry that till
Yeah.
forever.
Yeah. So it's still this ongoing thing, and how do you? So this rebirthing process now that you go through in assisting people to come to terms with what they've experienced and to heal from that. Would you like to mention any steps in that process of your rebirth then?
Yeah, I think one of the most important things is that it's not a punishment,
No.
and that with the karmic relationships and different things like that, that it's always an opportunity to love. And that's the most important thing, I think, for people to realize that for so many times we think that we're being punished or that we're doing something wrong, but we're not. So it's so important to get to that higher level of the soul, because at the soul's level we really know that we kind of like karma goes away, feelings of feeling alone or punished goes away, and then we really get to actually step into our true power, because it's so important for us to be living our soul's journey.
It is.
Yeah.
And like you say, connecting to that higher frequency, that higher energy, it helps us release or to realize a lot of those limiting thoughts of low self-worth, low self-esteem and anything else. But
Yeah.
I can hear Drama's going to come through, and this was such a joy because we Yoga actually has some questions for Drama, and earlier in the week when Paul and I sat and had a session with him, I said would he prefer that Yoga put the question to him, and of course I'm so pleased that they said yes. So I'm going to say hello.
Hello, my friends.
Hello.
Hello, Drama.
Hello. You have a question for us.
Yes. Thank you so much. I would love to ask you, is every single person on the planet Earth right now going through a rebirth?
Rebirth is experiencing in many ways, in many facets, and in many strengths. You can have the experience that you had through that near-death experience. But when you think of it, every morning that you wake up is a moment of rebirth. So, in fact, everyone is experiencing that. It's just that some will experience it in a much more deeper and meaningful way than others. And such is the way with this pathway of endeavoring to connect more strongly and become more in true alignment with the energies of your soul, and therefore the energies of the expansiveness that is creation. And this is something that you experience through this near-death experience, where you are really connecting to that infinite energy of your true self. And that energy then comes into your life experience as you return into your continued physical journey. But as with everything, gradually it begins to unfold itself, as you have spoken about. It unfolds itself in stages when you are ready for that further, to take that further step forward. But this does not mean that you need to have this near-death experience in order for this to really take place. You just have to have the intention of allowing yourself to step in to the truth of your being, in that greater state of alignment with the energy of your soul. And as that takes place, you are beginning this much stronger element of this rebirth into your elevated self, into your higher self, existing in this physical experience that you are currently going through. So that is the long answer. The short answer is yes.
Oh, that's so beautiful. Thank you so much for that. That really resonates. And the other question I have is, when will we be able to experience more peace on earth?
Whenever you choose to. Peace is something that is a natural state of your existence. And in allowing yourself to enter into that environment and the energy of that inner peace, then you are emitting and radiating that same energy out into the world to assist in that process. And it is there. It is happening. It is taking place. But rather than thinking of it as something happening external to you, it always begins from within, as does everything, in the same way that your realizations from your experience happened on an inner level, that you've then integrated it into your physical life. And such is the way of this process of being born into this world of yours, and to bring in that true aspect of who you are, to bring in that element of yourself that is that higher consciousness, that has that greater awareness, and allowing yourself to live in that energy. And that is the energy that brings about that greater enlightenment and fills you with that inner peace. And as you fill yourself with that inner peace on those elevated levels of being, you will find that you will see great differences externally to you. Because not only will your energies be assisting in others, but you will also be looking at the life, looking at existence, physical existence, through the eyes of your infinite soul, rather than your physical eyes. But know that all will be well. Believe it. Trust in that. But more importantly, trust in yourself and the decisions that you make in this life. It's part of your journey. Take ownership of that. Enjoy it. And allow the wisdom of your soul to come through and speak to you on ever increasing ways. And with that, my friends, we will say goodbye for now.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Drama.
Love to all. Thank you. And thank you for putting those questions to him, because we often ask, and it's nice to have somebody that has the confidence as well to put questions to him. So thank you to you. And thank you to Paul, who's back with us. So is there anything in closing that you'd like to add to this podcast, Yoga? And thank you so much. It's just been so enlightening for us as well. I'm sure it has for Paul as well.
Yeah, and I've loved hearing the story of it.
So much that you just have no idea how these experiences and this learning about this imprint, because we've talked a lot about imprinting, but how that was imprinted was just completely fascinating. So is there anything else you'd like to share with us before we close?
Yeah, I guess what's really coming to share is that, there is this, as special as a near-death experience is, that was one of my most exciting discoveries over diving into this over the last 22 years,
Yeah.
is that there is this non-typical near-death experience also where someone doesn't cross over and come back, but they have a specific incident that takes them into a very intense fear of death, and that actually creates the near death like state. So they're going into this same near death like state that someone like me that has crossed over and come back, and it's just such a special opening and opportunity. So I just really wanted to start to educate the public on that's something that's happening, and
Yeah.
it has the same amount of gifts and opportunity to
Yeah.
it
And
as a
you can
near death
really
experience.
feel that your expertise could help so many people. So if you have had a near-death experience or you think you've had a near-death experience, I'm sure Yoga would absolutely love to hear from you. She's going to give you her details, but they will be up on the screen. We will put them in the notes as well for you to receive. So would you just like to share what your website is and your social media?
Absolutely. You can reach out to me anytime. My website is consciousbreakthrough.com, and I actually have a free PDF there with the whole rebirth method that I have laid out. You can start going through the method yourself at home, and you can, figure out if you've had a near-death experience. I have a beautiful scale where you can look at what percentage of near-death experience you might have experienced, and then different things that you can do to start to walk yourself through the near-death process. So that's on my website at consciousbreakthrough.com. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We'll put all your details out on Facebook, your Instagram, and
Thanks.
you also have your own YouTube channel as well.
Yeah,
So-
YouTube channel under Yoga Premananda.
Yeah, so that will be all up on the screen for you. Yoga, we can't thank you
thank
enough.
you.
You are honestly, I just feel you're such a beautiful soul, so sincere and
love.
so wonderful. It's been a really lovely experience to have you on and to share your experiences with us, to assist others in helping them.
Yeah,
So,
no, it's beautiful, and I just love sharing this time with you.
yes,
So
yeah.
appreciated being here and getting to talk to your audience. So thank you.
Yeah, thank
Okay.
you. Well, thank you so much for tuning in, for listening. We trust that you've enjoyed listening to this fascinating subject again. And as always, we could have continued this conversation for a long time, but please share the podcast with others. We look forward to being with you again very soon. My podcast on the energetics update, what the energies that are coming in the next month, will be up as well very soon. But thank you so much again, Yoga. Keep
Thank you.
shining your light. Keep being who you are.
And keep trusting in your journey and following the wisdom of your soul.
Yes.
And that just leaves us to say,
Namaste.
Take care, everybody.